Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Celebrating Innovation Across Domains. My name is Peter Lee. I graduated CS and Art from Yale College, and last week I graduated Tech Management from the Yale School of Management. I'm currently the lead engineer at Makerstate, and I am very excited to be your host this afternoon. In my time at Yale, innovation has evolved exponentially. When I first came here, it was the height of COVID. It was a time of online classes and Among Us game nights. Entrepreneurship existed at Yale, as it has for decades, but it was smaller. It was quieter. The Sci Center sat empty, and there were fewer extracurricular programs. But most of all, we were thinking smaller. But what happened next at Yale changed me forever. As students trickled back to campus, things began to change. The demo days went from simple presentations to theatrical productions. The collaborations between different schools at Yale rose in number. Students committed to building the ecosystem, like Francis Pollock, who had been revolutionizing IP scaling for creatives, or Grace O'Keefe, who had helped elevate the Sci Center from a fancy study place to a gathering place for founders, or the countless others I could name, supported by amazing staff and faculty, began to transform the very culture of entrepreneurship at Yale. Soon, I would hear students eating at Commons from the School of Public Health and the School of the Environment discussing what starting a nonprofit together would look like. I would see CS students bouncing ideas off with law students on how to activate new voters. I would see theater makers and artists break into a space that they had so long been barred from. Our liberal arts core had become our greatest entrepreneurial strength. It was so inspiring that I even decided to start my own venture, Makerstate, and commit my early career to entrepreneurship. All this has come at a critical time. AI has simultaneously leveled the playing field for new founders and made it more difficult to stand up to big tech. Traditional pathways for cultural work are threatened, while new, authentic works of creativity are thought of every day. The future of work itself is uncertain. We are in a landscape primed for disruption, for innovation, for a school like Yale or a state like Connecticut to support millions of emerging entrepreneurs. This session aims to celebrate that journey, both the one taken and the one to come. We have 3 tracks, each a 12-minute showcase, which will be introduced by a corresponding track leader. First off, we will have our data track, with KP Yapala introducing, and a showcase from Mark Abraham from Data Haven. Following that, we will have our civic track with Caroline Smith introducing and a showcase by Ming Thompson. Finally, we will have our arts track with Francis Pollock introducing and a showcase by Kathleen Wren of her original musical, The Bridge. Let's hear it for them. Before we begin, I would like to thank KP, Caroline, and Francis, my fellow Yale students, for both selecting today's presenters and putting this session together, and for being incredible advocates and dedicated members of this community. Please give it up for our track leaders. Amazing. Thank you all for coming, and without further ado, please welcome KP to the stage for our data track.
Thank you so much, Peter. Good afternoon. So I'm so pleased to be here today with all of you. So as mentioned, I'm the lead actually for the health track. And we've been having some great sessions this morning. And I think one of the main themes we've been talking about is health innovation really isn't about gadgets, right? I think a lot of times when we think about innovation, we think about the newest technological tool or gadget. But as a space that relies on policy, that relies on data, that relies on so many other things, like we want to expand how we think about innovation in the health space. And that's why I'm so excited to have my good friend Mark Abraham to speak with you today. He's the executive director of Data Haven. He is a Yale College alum and also an alum of the Yale School of Public Health. But I think really what he brings into the innovation lens is the power of storytelling through data, and using that storytelling to influence policy that ultimately influences many people's lives. So we're going to hear from Mark about the power of people and place in health innovation. So Mark, welcome.
Thank you, KP. Go to the next slide. Oh, I got the clicker, sorry. So, yeah, you might not know that Data Haven was founded 30 years ago, right here in this building that used to occupy the site of this auditorium. In a basement room, federal grants paid for graduate students to run version 1.0 of a geographic information system for New Haven. So I don't have any photos of that setup from 30 years ago, but I have some photos from our 25th anniversary, also held here at SOM in 2018. Panels at the event covered data innovations happening across Connecticut, and one included federal officials and advocates discussing potential threats to a fair and valid 2020 census. We're starting to plan the 2030 census right now. So out of curiosity, raise your hand if you're even more concerned about the 2030 census than you were about the 2020 census. As our founding story suggests, there's a strong connection between place and innovation. If places aren't represented in the census, the American democracy won't even function. But more broadly, people won't reach their full potential if they are not doing well in health and otherwise. So what I'm about to show you might shock you. Researchers at the Yale School of Public Health released a study last month, and NBC News headline that day was that life expectancy for women in some states has not budged for the past 100 years. In one state, the lifespan for women actually rose by 12 years, from 75 to 87. But in another state, the lifespan for women dropped by 1 year to 76 years. Anyone want to guess which two states those were? Yes. So there was a huge difference between Connecticut and Oklahoma on this. Notably, the new Yale study was the first to provide comprehensive mortality trends across U.S. states by birth cohort rather than one time period, by analyzing 179 million death records over a 100-year period. And this was a groundbreaking way to really understand how state-level policy changes could impact individuals of a particular age as they make their way across the lifespan. In 2020, a different study by Dr. Jennifer Montez at Syracuse showed that 50 years ago, Connecticut and Oklahoma had the exact same life expectancy. If you fast forward to 2018, you could see that Connecticut is among the healthiest states, that's the blue line here, whereas Oklahoma is among the least healthy states. So you might ask, how did this happen? Connecticut, why are we even talking about Connecticut and Oklahoma anyways? They have similar demographics. You could see they're about 61% white. They have almost identical unemployment, Medicaid coverage rates, and voter registration. Now this slide is a little hard to see, but this is a chart of policy liberalism scores, and it explains why the Syracuse study highlighted these two states. Dr. Montez and her team looked across 135 different policy areas, including tobacco control, immigration, gun control, and many others. In total, Connecticut passed the most progressive legislation of all 50 states during this time period, whereas Oklahoma went the farthest in the other direction. So you can see the little blue and red lines there. And when reflecting on how life expectancy has diverged so much across the nation over this time, it's important to think about why these laws affect women more than men. You might imagine how policies such as paid leave and child health insurance are of greater relevance to women, and this quote describes that well. But we should also think about how these differences in laws have a disproportionate effect on the well-being of immigrants and many other groups in our society. If we aren't considering equity in all of our policies, we're stifling our ability to be the most innovative and productive society possible. Now, to demonstrate this, consider that in 1980, the United States was among the top nations in life expectancy, right about here. But if you follow this line over time, you can see that we now have the lowest lifespan of any high-income country. Even though we spend twice as much money on healthcare, about $13,000 per person, compared to these other wealthy nations that spend about $6,000 per person. So what you can take away from this is that, there are places and systems here that are failing to support our health in optimal ways. More than just statistics, though, these numbers represent the thousands of lives and individual potential that is cut short every year and that we see in news stories every day in our state and elsewhere. But to some degree, Connecticut is a success story, and we should celebrate that. In fact, if everyone had enjoyed the health advantages of states like Connecticut that adopted more progressive policies, the United States would likely be near the top of this chart, according to the Syracuse paper. Now, there is a big catch here. Take a look at this map, which shows that just going a mile across our city, or anywhere else in Connecticut for that matter, changes residents' lifespans by as much as 20 years. This gap is much larger than the 12-year difference you saw, or 13 years between Oklahoma and Connecticut earlier. So it's not just the policies of your state that matter, but whether the benefits of those laws truly reach every single family. While Connecticut, on average, has much greater access to dental care for children, to tobacco control, and many other resources, the community-level data show that not everyone gets the same mileage out of those policies. We need to have the courage to break down the data to see who benefits and who doesn't. Now, innovating to change these conditions begins with listening. At Data Haven, one of our programs has completed live, in-depth interviews with over 52,000 randomly selected adults throughout the state of Connecticut in every zip code. And to create the most meaningful local data that's relevant to all communities, we also ask about important life experiences like incarceration, migration history, disability, and others that are not included in most population surveys. You can imagine here 2 moms, one in Greenwich, likely to have access to fresh food and great parks and social support, another in North Hartford where food insecurity rates are 6 times higher, and finding a safe place to play is a daily worry. The survey here shows radically different experiences around health in the same state. People use this information, like the fact that mental health challenges are more than 3 times higher in North Hartford at 33% compared to 10%, to influence the funding that comes their way. Thanks to actions backed by these local data, we've seen bus routes rerouted to reach suburban jobs, food pantries securing funding, after-school programs securing large federal grants. You can imagine older adults who are getting together for new programs at the public library, improving the social support that they get. It's critical to ground truth these data by talking directly to residents and ensuring that they have the ability to access and to present this information in their own words. This spring, our team worked with the Caribbean American Society in Hartford, the Reentry Welcome Center, and about 20 other neighborhood-based organizations to conduct focus groups across the state. Emerging from these conversations included not just affordable housing and the quality of healthcare as top concerns, but also the responsiveness of local government and institutions to their needs. Residents everywhere said that it was hard to find information. They weren't sure how they could influence policy change, such as the ones I discussed in the national public health studies I just shared. We need to change this by ensuring that people have access to the information that they need and that they feel heard. Now, the last time I presented to a group this large, it was at a national epidemiology conference at a conference center overlooking the Persian Gulf. But instead of taking the 14-hour flight to get there, I presented it virtually. We don't necessarily have to connect face-to-face with everyone, since technology now allows us to share ideas and influence health in so many new ways. But face-to-face contact is still very important. It's only true if we reach across barriers like geographic, language, by level of access in the face of discrimination, disconnection, and other social divides, that we can truly influence health. And as I said, influence and innovation, it starts with listening, respecting, and ensuring community voice. I can't wait to hear more about your ideas for building up places that create a healthier and more connected future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for the insightful presentation. Up next, we will have Caroline, who will be introducing our civic track.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Caroline Tomby Smith, and I serve on the City of New Haven Board of Alders as the Alder for Ward 9. And I'm incredibly thrilled to be leading the inaugural civic track this year at the summit. Look, I have been in New Haven now since I was 17 years old, almost half my life for the last 15 years. And there are so many different reasons why I fell in love with this place and this community. But one is because of the strong and resilient civic spirit that's here. You all probably felt it. You feel it rippling through the sidewalks and the streets and the history of this place. And it's also a community of civic entrepreneurs. And I think, for me, I believe that every single city needs civic entrepreneurs. And that's always been true in American history. When Ben Franklin founded the first library, when he founded the first volunteer fire corps, and we especially need civic entrepreneurs right now, here, today. And that's really what the civic track is all about this year at the summit, is highlighting the stories, the wisdom, the innovations of civic entrepreneurs across the country, especially around some of the biggest issues of the next decade: housing, workforce development, and neighborhood leadership. And, I'll end by saying, here's what I believe. We're 25 years into the 21st century. And as we look ahead to the next 75 years, I believe this can be the civic century, a time where we have a resurgence in civic purpose and civic life. And, to make that future real, I believe that we should see civic infrastructure as infrastructure, just like our sidewalks, just like our streets. And therefore, it's something we ought to invest in, innovate upon, and really treat with a level of care and rigor and attention. And so to take us deeper into this vision, I can think of no better champion for civic life than my friend and collaborator, Ming Thompson, architect, civic designer, and a force for public imagination. Here you go, Ming.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody in the courtyard, too. I know it's lunchtime. Thank you all for being here. My name is Ming Thompson. I'm an architect based here in New Haven. I'm a critic at the Yale School of Architecture, and I'm involved in many great civic design projects here in New Haven. So what is civics? Civics, for me, conjures up the picture of my 8th grade civics textbook, a big white building with columns on the front. That's what civics was to me. But civics is a study of the rights and duties of citizens and how government and society function. But it's not really about a big white building. It's about people. The goal of civics is to help us become informed, active members of our community. Conversations around civics frequently center around large institutions and governments. But civics also taps into smaller scale engagement with public life and community decision-making on an individual level. In a time of great distrust in government and the weakening of institutions, I can see all around me, and I think you can too, a spirited, creative groundswell of civic engagement on the horizon. Not one arising from large institutions, but one of individuals working at a very small scale. Something I think of as micro-civics. Back in the 2010s, there was really only one way to talk about high-impact civics work, driven by the paradigms of big tech. Programs and grants and investments all focused on civic engagement that required scalability, the need to spin small-scale efforts off into big impacts. To be important, we needed KPIs, we needed growth, we needed larger and larger impact. But micro-civics, on the other hand, is rooted in a very simple idea. We just bring small groups of people together. And it doesn't need to grow. It doesn't need to be a prototype. It's just simply getting small groups of people together, and that's an end unto itself. Today, only 16% of Americans feel connected to their communities. Imagine what we could accomplish if we could increase that number. So we bring small groups of people together. We create new and sometimes temporary physical spaces together. And we build hyper-local belonging and community resilience. Small groups and efforts have a big impact. Half of Americans report feeling lonely regularly, and the mortality impact of that social disconnection is the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. This is an important thing. But we call it community building. We call it community engagement. But everybody in this room knows that when we use the word community, that's a soft word, a nice to have, a non-essential. So I think we should reclaim this hefty word that Caroline has given us, civics, to talk about what we do here, bringing people together, to garden, to make art, to spend time, but in all cases, strengthen civic bonds, create civic spaces, and in fact, create resilient people and resilient society. A socially connected city is a healthy city. Today, I want to share case studies of micro-civics work happening here in New Haven, led by individuals. The first group, New Haven Sketchers. We have Alex in the room with us today. Alex and his friend Celia have been going around New Haven for years with a pen and a paper, sketching undiscovered places around the city. After joining a sketch group on a trip to San Francisco, they saw how accessible this model could be. Easy to start, easy to join, and free, with a low barrier to entry. They started New Haven Sketchers, a weekly sketch club, and added a very New Haven spin by including an educational component, inviting speakers to offer environmental, architectural, and historical perspectives through a range of partnerships. What they do is really simple. Every person makes a sketch, but the real product is what happens between your eyes, the art, and the pen, a process of observing, of slowing down, of paying attention. And actually paying attention is a profound experience. Looking at places they haven't gone before, places that might not be scenic, but are beautiful and mundane parts of the city. Alex told me, you come to sketch what you see every day, like a fire hydrant, but then you really look at it and you see the complexity and interest of an everyday thing, and you can reimagine it and think how this thing could be different and how it could be better for us, better for our community. That's the goal. Just down the hill from where we are now, Alex Kleiner, born and raised in New Haven, part of New Haven's great, incredible institutions for kids like the Peabody and the Eli Whitney Workshop, wanted to create a business that didn't exist here. And with 2 young kids in mind, dreamed up a very tiny toy store called Pebbles. Alex said, we wanted to create a business that could have an impact well beyond selling toys, a place where kids could grow up, a community space, a place for folks to gather to make friends. The store, of course, had to be first and foremost financially sustainable. And at the end of year 1, it has been. 15,000 toys sold as of Saturday, new jobs created, $5,000 raised for local nonprofits, donations to local schools, and efforts to help other small business get off the ground. In an Amazon-led world, Alex says, it's the responsibility of local citizens and the businesses they support to build social fabric and to create economic development. When you shop local and support stores like Pebbles, this is your impact. It's real, not digital. Just down the hill in 2016, Nadine Horton, community activist and longtime chair of her local community management team, found herself on a hunt. She and her gardening friends had lost their longtime community gardening site. But luckily, Justin Elliker, who was then head of the New Haven Land Trust, helped them find an overgrown, abandoned lot at the edge of the New Haven Armory, adjacent to the correctional center. Nadine says, this is a community. We garden together, we do the work, and we harvest it. And it's not just to grow food, but to help each other, a way to connect all New Haven residents in a collaborative way. Now, the Armory Community Garden has become a flourishing spot. Every Saturday, you can go down for work days open to all. The plots are shared, and people work together, coming from all walks of life. Neighbors, unhoused individuals, faculty at Yale, students spend time together with the soil and the plants and the sun. Berries and microgreens flourish, and so does Nadine's vision for how a simple idea can spawn investment and hope in our city. Nadine said, when Justin showed us this space, I knew it was the spot. The Armory and the jail, both places forgotten. The city's forgotten the Armory, and those in jail are forgotten. Now we're here, and you can't forget us. The project is bringing new life and new hope, hosting green skills job training for recently incarcerated individuals. And Nadine and her group have become de facto stewards of the New Haven Armory, a vast 1930s building that was once a major site in New Haven's Black community and is now in danger of ruin and abandonment. The planting of a single seed might again spawn care for this important cultural resource. Caroline was elected alder, New Haven's version of a city council person, in 2023. She represents Upper East Rock and Fairhaven, and she began hearing from neighbors on Lawrence Street that traffic speeds were too high as people zipped onto the small block from State. Caroline organized a committee of about 20 residents, and together they thought through traffic calming measures, stop signs, flashing lights, speed bumps. But what if we could do 2 things at once, slowing traffic and creating gathering space? Inspired by small street closures around town, the team devised an idea for a street plaza. Caroline said, we're at a moment in time where there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm to utilize our public space in innovative ways that actually address the broader city challenges we might have: loneliness, mental health, space for connection. Last year, the team put together a month-long pilot, closing the section of Lawrence Street and transforming a street for cars into a plaza for people, a place for outdoor dining, music, dancing, and games. And we worked with Caroline to create a toolkit to show how you can call City Hall to get permission. You can get simple, low-cost materials and set up your own street plaza. So what do these micro-civics projects have in common? First, all are grounded in partnership. These are largely not organizations, but just loose groups of individuals with no money but a lot of dreams, who leverage partnerships with existing institutions to borrow resources, space, and knowledge. Second, they are all low-tech, grounded in in-person relationships and facing those challenges that working in the real world brings. Third, each project creates new space, establishing real places rooted deeply in the physical network of the city, and making a place for people where there was none. And last, each project includes education as part of their core work. New Haven is home to many landmark educational institutions, Yale just one among many. And any New Havener can tell you that this is a place of great intellectual curiosity and excitement, and we want this to be shared by all. And most importantly, micro-civics are regenerative for our city. These projects empower participants to build relationships, deeply observe their city, and see they have the capacity to create change in their communities. And there's a ripple effect as every person who goes to Sketch Club, every person who goes to the street plaza, leaves with those with the education and empathy they've gained from those experiences. And micro-civics carry out the unique task of building community resilience through belonging. They meet basic human needs: job skills, creativity, transportation, and they do all of this through the basic need for human social connection. But they do all of this with basically zero resources. This isn't to say they need no resources, however, so this is my call to action for you. Caroline asks us, how do we make the 21st century the civic century? It's already happening. All around us, individuals in your city, here in New Haven, are doing the work to build a civic century, and they need resources. Across this country, we see an upswing in support for micro-civics, from the City of Boston's micro grants for block parties, to New Haven's Arts Council Sandbox, a free space for artists, to New Haven's $100 Know Your Neighbors Fund. Small amounts go a long way. So what can you do? Find ways to create more opportunities. Fund an award that promotes micro-civics work and spurs more initiatives. Build a lending library with supplies and tools these groups can use. And if you are an institution, if you are an organization, find low-lift ways to offer space or knowledge where it's needed. And most importantly, show up. Recognize and amplify the small and steady work that is already being done. Do your civic duty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ming. That was an incredible presentation. I'd like to take a second to please ask people to outside listen in to actually start making their way back in, because after this session will be the keynote with the president of Yale and also the governor of Connecticut. So yeah. And up next, we have the arts track, which is especially dear to me as an artist who came into Yale with not a lot of idea about how I was going to go about making a career out of it. And I met Frances about 4 years ago, and she really, really changed some of the ways I thought about art. And I think she's been doing that for a lot of people in the community as well. So up next to introduce the arts track is Frances Pollock. Woo!
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to reiterate what Peter said. If you're outside in the courtyard, please start making your way in. We are the opening act for the president of Yale, for the governor of Connecticut, and for the provost of innovation, which is a startling honor. So as you're finishing up your lunch, please dispose of your boxes in a orderly manner, but please come and find your seat so that we can stay on time. And if you can't tell by that little preamble, I'm also the one that organized this event. I have scared everyone into sticking only to 12 minutes, and we have run ahead, which is shocking for a showcase. So I'm here to talk a little bit about what the arts track is. Now, who thinks that it's a little strange that there's an arts track at like a business summit? Yeah, me too. As an artist, I find that strange. And you would be wrong, because historically, arts and this type of event don't really mesh, right? A lot of times the way that artists think about their work is that if we're trying to think about how to get it out into the world and to get people to pay us money for it, then somehow it cheapens it. And I think that we have done a disservice in thinking so black and white about that dichotomy. Because right now, in the arts, we're in a world in which our historic structures are really disintegrating in front of our eyes. There's a lot of reasons that they are. Some of them are outside forces that are really frustrating to us, but a lot of those reasons are very internal, because we haven't been imaginative enough about the possibility of our field, because we haven't been innovative enough, because we haven't considered what is the math behind what we're doing, what is the value that we bring into a place, and how do we marry that value, that economic value, with the values that we hold so dear as artists. So today, in thinking about how do you demonstrate that value and values, I wanted to invite a project that's near and dear to my heart, that I'm personally involved in, that I think exemplifies the type of value-making potential that marries with value storytelling. So what you're going to hear in just a minute is you're going to hear an excerpt from a new musical called The Bridge. And it is the story of Emily Warren Roebling, who is the woman who secretly built the Brooklyn Bridge. When her husband fell ill from the bends, she took up the reins and drove the project forward for 11 years, and this was decades before women could both vote and own property. Now that is a story of innovation that I want to see on stage. I'm going to actually introduce the visionary behind this project, Kathleen Wren, who's going to tell you a little bit more about it. And instead of just telling you about it, we're going to sing about it. And you're going to hear some of the music. In this project, what we're also trying to do is we're trying to reimagine the structures by which arts can be considered in a way that marries both that value of economics and that value of why we do arts in the first place, to mirror our humanity, to show the world that the stories that we tell about ourselves and to ourselves are really important. We're reimagining the structure of this musical, so hopefully it mirrors a little bit more of a functional startup so that we can start to combat some of these system problems that we're facing. And we're doing it all here in Connecticut, because Connecticut, as you may know, has historically been the out-of-town tryout for Broadway, right? So that's our legacy. That's our history. Is the great shows that we have grown to love and have become franchises that have passed down from generation to generation are largely incubated here, and we're hoping to continue that tradition. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome to the stage the exquisite Kathleen Wren, but also Katie Emerson and Jacob Stebley, who are going to be performing selections from the new musical, The Bridge.
Hi, everybody. Hello. My husband is at home, lying in a bed, looking out a window. My husband should be here, but he is there instead. And no, he doesn't want to be. yet there he must remain, lying in that bed, looking out that window. And here you fought in vain for that dream inside his head that no one now will ever see. But if I go from there to here, and I go from here to there, he'll have a bridge in me. In June of 1872, less than 3 years into construction, Washington Roebling, chief engineer of the Brooklyn Bridge, found himself bedridden with a mysterious illness and unable to continue with the project. He dictated his resignation letter to his wife, Emily, and ordered her to deliver it on his behalf. But Emily had another idea. For the next 11 years, she would take her husband's place as chief, driving his dictated orders from his bedside to the work site by carriage, and eventually making engineering decisions on her own in secret. As they say, behind every great man is a great woman.
But while Washington was leaning on Emily, Emily was leaning on someone else. Marianne McMahon, the Roebling's charming Irish nanny.
Headstrong Irish nanny.
And you're damn lucky I was. Hell, if it weren't for me, you'd never would have had the courage to do what you did now, would ya?
Perhaps not.
She wouldn't have. Listen, when I met this woman, she didn't even drive her own carriage anymore because Mr. Roebling didn't approve.
That's not exactly.
But when someone tells me I can't do something or other, you know what I say? Watch me. Show a Galway girl 10 to 1 that something surely can't be done. Show a Galway girl 10 to 1 that something shan't be dared. To a Galway girl, some frontier, some others found, so fierce and fearsome, one by one, around they spun, and all went running scared. Tell her boy, it's crystal clear, it's such a bleeding bad idea. Tell her boy, she's mad to try when the end indeed is cursed. But show a girl who's just begun, the odds of win are slim to none, and 10 to 1 she'll show you, son, that she will be the first. Well, the ground is even, and there's miles of open land. Anyone at all can seek the prize. But when there is an ocean or a country vast and grand, that is when a leader must arise. Someone who will forge ahead through doubt and through despair. Mom, it's you who got me here. I am getting there. So tell me when the girls are born, its trails well trod, already worn. Tell me when we think again, we're asking for the worst. But I'm a girl whose brother died before he saw the world was wide. So as long as I am living, I decide, and I will be the first. So, are you gonna start driving again or what?
It's not that simple.
Sure it is. Grab that dusty old riding crop hanging from the door and off you go.
You're not married to my husband. You don't understand.
You're right. I don't. And I hope I never do. You won all those trophies, and then you just handed over the reins to your life without a second thought. And the saddest part is, you don't even miss it.
Of course I miss it. Every day I miss it. The smell of the leather on my hands, the rush of the wind against my face, the way my lips would chap, the way my pulse would race, the cool of the sweat along my brow, the fog of my breath against the air, the way the mud would splash, the way I wouldn't care when I was in that seat, and in control, and indescribably whole. Charting the course, choosing the speed, hearing the horses blowing, and knowing what they need, bucking the norms, breaking the chains, finding a tiny place where I could thrive, holding the reins, charting the course, choosing the speed, feeling the horses slowing, and showing how to lead, gaining new ground a woman rarely gains. Wishing a better world would soon arrive, but till it did, I'd wait and I'd survive, holding the
Spoiler alert! She started driving again, thanks to yours truly.
And as expected, Washington was hardly pleased.
Typical man.
In his defense, troubles were mounting on the work site. One by one, the crew began to show symptoms of a mysterious illness called the bends. And the sickest among them was Washington himself.
You had to care for him day and night. The furrowed brow, the racing brain, the silent toil,
the reddened eyes, the heavy sighs, the midnight oil.
She ropes her neck and puts a second kettle on to boil.
I've heard this tale before, so many times before. The woman behind, unnamed and unseen, a tower to lean on, who can't afford to lean. She's nothing unique, so pay her no mind, but look in the shadows and you'll find the woman behind.
You did the best you could. But before long, that rainy April night came, when Mr. Roebling was simply too sick to leave his room.
The Brooklyn Bridge might never be built. I stood on the Brooklyn shoreline before the crew, with Washington's resignation letter in my hand, unsure what to say.
While I stood at the ticket counter at Grand Central Station, unsure whether I had the courage to leave my daughter behind and head west.
And in that moment, although we were a river apart, we each drew strength from each other.
And went in the only direction we knew how.
Onward, onward, on to what's next, what's new. Onward, onward, where the future creeps into view. To a shore we swore we'd never reach. Then suddenly we're standing on the beach. That's what bridges do. My husband is the engineer, but I am a fine horsewoman, the fastest you've ever seen. And together, we will be your chief. Your brothers gave their lives, digging in this earth, seeking something greater. They had children, they had wives, so what was it all worth if this vision will forever be a reverie? But if I go from here to there, and I go from there to here, you'll have a bridge in me. and we'll go onward, onward, on to what's next, what's new. Onward, onward, where tomorrow is peeking through. To a side we tried, but could not meet. Then suddenly there's road beneath our feet. That's what bridges do. When the ground is even and it's miles of open land, no one blinks an eye when someone tries.
Can I do what no one else has done?
But when there is a river many claim cannot be spanned, that is when a leader must arise. Someone who will take the reins when no one else
shouldn't dare.
Colonel Roebling got you here. Let me get you onward, onward, on to what's next, what's new. We'll go onward, onward, where impossible turns to true. To a goal we hold within our sights, where suddenly New York is Brooklyn Heights. That's what bridges do. Thank you very much.
Wow, wow, wow. Give it up one more time for that amazing performance, everybody. Woo! This is going to be the cheapest you'll get to see this before it goes to Broadway, so enjoy it. And please give it up for all of our presenters and track leaders, and everyone who made this session possible. Thank you all. If you see any of them around the next 2 days, please say hi and engage. And thank you all for coming and helping us usher in a new era of innovation entrepreneurship at Yale. If the last few are anything to stand by, the next 5 are going to completely change the game. I'm off to prepare for my own demo. It's room 2230, 1:30. Y'all should stop by. But thank you again for coming, and cheers, everybody.